I never thought I would see the day when silence felt louder than the sound of my own heartbeat. Silence is supposed to be peaceful, a blessing even. But the silence of an empty home, the silence that settles in when your children no longer walk through the door, that is a different kind of quiet, a heavy quiet. Quiet that makes you wonder where life went and when your place in it started to fade without you noticing. My name doesn't matter too much. I'm just an old woman now. A mother, a grandmother, a wife. Someone who once dreamed of a house full of laughter, footsteps, and grandchildren running across the floor. For most of my life, that dream came true. And then, slowly, almost quietly, the dream changed. This is the story of the day my children left us, to grow old alone, and it's not a story full of anger, not even blame. It's simply the truth as I lived it, a truth that still stings sometimes, especially at night, especially when I sit by the bedroom window, watching the road that used to bring them home. But let me start at the moment everything truly hit me. It was a Sunday morning. Soft sunlight slipping through the curtains. My husband, Amir, was sitting at the kitchen table with his tea, reading the same newspaper he's been pretending to understand for years. I was making parathas, not because anyone was visiting, not because anyone asked, but because old habits cling to you, even when the people you made the habits for no longer do. I turned to him and said, "Should we call the kids today?" It was the same question I asked almost every week. He looked up at me with a small, tired smile, the kind of smile a man wears when he's trying not to show he's hurting too. "You can try," he said softly. "Maybe they're free this weekend." I nodded and wiped my hands on the towel. My phone was on the counter. I picked it up, opened our family group chat, and typed, "Lunch at home today. Would love to see all of you." I even added a small red heart at the end, one of the few emojis I learned to use. The message was delivered instantly, and then nothing. 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. The little scene mark stayed gray. "Next week. Soon. Inshallah. We'll see." Promises made with good intentions, then forgotten as quickly as they were spoken. Amir looked at me as I set the phone down. His eyes were gentle, understanding. He didn't ask what she said. He didn't need to. He already knew. I sat across from him. The parathas were getting cold. The steam from the tea had already faded. "That's okay," I whispered, even though it wasn't. We ate in silence. Again. By evening, all 3 of our children had seen the message. None of them came. That night, as I lay in bed beside my husband, staring at the ceiling, the truth settled into my chest like heavy, unmoving weight. Our children had their own lives now. Lives that no longer needed us. Lives that no longer included us. Still, I told myself it was just a phase. Kids grow up. Kids get busy. Kids get tired. Nothing to worry about. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to admit existed, I felt something else. I felt forgotten. A little about our family. Before I continue, I should tell you a little about who we used to be, the family we once were. My husband and I raised 3 children, 2 daughters, 1 son. And like every parent, we made mistakes, but we loved them more than anything. We worked hard to give them a comfortable life. We were not wealthy, but we never let our children feel poor. Their tiffin boxes were always full, their clothes always clean, their school fees always paid on time. Even if it meant Amir worked extra shifts or I stitched clothes for neighbors late at night. I loved being a mother. I lived for it. I remember waking up early to braid their hair, iron their uniforms, make their breakfast, pack their lunches. I remember waiting at the gate every afternoon, watching for them to turn the corner. I remember tiny hands tugging at my dupatta, asking me to read them another story or cook their favorite meal. Our home was full back then, full of noise, full of life. As they grew older, things changed, as they always do. They went to college, they made friends, they found partners, they got married, they moved out. And I was happy for them, truly. That's what a parent wants, for their children to grow, to succeed, to build their own futures. But no one tells you how quiet the house becomes once they leave. No one warns you how empty the dinner table starts to look. No one prepares you for the day your phone stops ringing. I trusted that they would still come home, that they would still call, that they would still need us, because children always need their parents, don't they? At least, that's what I used to believe, when visits became less frequent. In the first year after they all got married, they visited often. Weekends, birthdays, sometimes even unplanned drop-ins. They would walk through the gates smiling, carrying boxes of sweets or bags of groceries. Back then, I didn't have to ask them to come. Then slowly, so slowly we didn't even notice at first, the visits became less frequent. Once every 2 weeks, then once a month, then only when there was an occasion. At first, I made excuses for them. They're settling into married life, I'd tell Amir. Let them enjoy. They're building their careers, I'd say. They'll come when they're free. They're tired from work. They live far. They have responsibilities. They'll come soon. I repeated these lines so often, they became rehearsed, practiced, memorized. But excuses don't fill empty chairs at family dinners. They don't replace the sound of laughter echoing in the hallway. They don't warm a house that's grown too big for just two old people living quietly inside it. I remember one afternoon when Amir looked at me and said very softly, "You don't need to defend them every time." I just smiled at him, but my heart cracked a little that day. The last family dinner we had together, the last full family dinner we had, all 3 children, their spouses, their kids, happened almost 2 years ago. I remember that day so clearly. We spent the whole morning cooking. Chicken biryani, kebab, kheer, homemade roti. The house smelled like the old days, the good days. I kept checking the clock. Amir kept adjusting the chairs to make sure everyone would fit comfortably. "They're on their way," my son messaged around 1 p.m. My heart actually skipped a beat. That's what happens when you're a parent. Even grown children still make you feel like you're waiting for Eid morning. When they came, the house lit up. My granddaughter ran into my arms. My grandson clung to Amir's legs. Everyone hugged each other. It felt like the world made sense again. For a few hours, it felt like we were still a family. But it was short-lived. Everyone left in a hurry that evening. My eldest daughter had to pick her kids up for tuition. My son said he had early work the next day. My younger daughter said they were already late for dinner with her in-laws. It was understandable. Life pulls people in different directions. But after they left, Amir and I stood in the doorway watching their cars disappear. "They'll come again soon," I said, and he said nothing. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. The day the realization hit me. But if you ask me when I truly knew, when the truth became impossible to deny, it was that Sunday morning I mentioned earlier. One quiet Sunday. One unanswered message. One cold lunch. One moment that made me realize the truth I had been avoiding. Our children had slowly built lives in which we existed only occasionally. Like guests who appeared in the background, not the main story anymore. I didn't cry that day. Instead, I smiled at myself in the kitchen mirror. A tired, sad smile. and whispered, "So this is how parents grow old." A small scene I can't forget. Later that evening, I stepped outside into the small garden Amir and I had planted together years ago. The roses were blooming. The jasmine smelled sweet. The air was cool, the way it gets near sunset. I closed my eyes and imagined laughter. Imagined little feet running. Imagined chairs scraping the floor. Imagined voices calling, "Mama! Mama, look at this! Mama, can you help me?" But when I opened my eyes, the garden was empty. I whispered into the air, "I miss you," not to anyone in particular, just to the idea of the family we once were. Amir walked out a few minutes later and stood beside me. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. In long marriages, silence becomes another form of language. We stood there holding hands, two old souls in a beautiful garden, wondering when our place in our children's hearts began to shrink. The slow change we didn't want to see. As days passed after that Sunday, I began noticing little things, small details that revealed how much life had changed, not just around us, but also between us and our children. Maybe these changes had always been there, creeping in slowly, like sunlight fading into dusk. But when your heart is full of hope, you overlook the shadows. One morning, I found a notebook in the drawer near the living room. It was old, the pages yellowing slightly at the edges. Inside, I had written short reminders, birthdays, shopping lists, notes about medications, recipes I wanted to try, and small goals for each new year. But what caught my eye was a list at the back of the notebook titled, "Things to Talk About When the Kids Visit." I didn't remember writing it, but there it was, a list of little stories, updates, funny moments, gardening progress. All the things I wanted to share with them. It felt strange, almost embarrassing, to see how I had turned into someone who wrote notes just so I wouldn't forget what to say to my own children. The truth was simple. Their visits had become so rare that I had started preparing for them like special occasions. And that realization broke something inside me. H2, remembering who they used to be, I thought about my eldest, Sarah. When she was little, she followed me everywhere. She would help me fold laundry, roll out dough, water the plants, and organize her school bag. She used to say, "Mama, when I grow up, I'll take care of you and Baba. You won't have to do anything." And I believed her. She wasn't lying. Children don't lie when they make promises from a place of love. They mean every word, until life teaches them other responsibilities. My second daughter, Layla, was the mischievous one. She loved to laugh. She loved making others laugh even more. She would sing loudly while sweeping the courtyard, dance in the kitchen, and tease her siblings until someone ran to me crying. She once said, "Mama, I don't ever want to leave this house." And she meant it, for as long as childhood lasted. My son, my youngest, the quietest of the three. He was sensitive in ways he never admitted. He used to slip handwritten notes under my door, notes that said things like, "I love you, Mama. Don't worry, I'll always be here for you. You are the best mother." He said less as he grew older, but he loved me deeply. And yet, these children, the ones who had once clung to me, cried in my lap, needed me for everything, were now the same children who couldn't spare one afternoon for us. That's the part of motherhood no one prepares you for. Brie, the moment you realize the people you raised with your whole heart no longer need you the way you need them. H2. The phone calls that became shorter. I tried, after that Sunday, to reignite the closeness we once had. I called each of them more often, but the calls were always short. 5 minutes, sometimes 2. Sometimes they didn't pick up at all. When they did answer, the conversations felt rushed. "Hi, Mom, I'm a little busy right now. Can I call you later?" We're heading out, maybe tomorrow. Mama, can you talk to Dad? I'm driving. I often said, it's okay, finish your work. Even when all I wanted was to hear their voices for a few more seconds. Parents don't want much. Just a few moments. A few words. A little affection. Nothing grand. But the world keeps turning, and our children get caught in its speed, forgetting the people who walked slowly beside them when they were young. Slowly, our calls became transactional. Updates about health, reminders about bills, quick check-ins that felt more like obligations than conversations. I didn't blame them. I truly didn't. But the ache in my chest grew heavier. Amir's quiet heartbreak. One evening, Amir was sitting on the veranda holding a cup of tea. The sky was turning orange, and birds were flying home. Home, where they belonged. I sat beside him, and after a few minutes of silence, he said, "You know what hurts the most?" I looked at him gently. "It's not that they don't come," he said. "It's that they don't seem to miss us." There was no bitterness in his voice, only sadness, deep, quiet sadness. I reached over and squeezed his hand. He squeezed mine back. For decades, we had faced every storm together. Money struggles, health scares, raising children, building a life from nothing. But that moment, that quiet, painful moment, felt heavier than any storm before. Because some storms don't hit all at once. Some storms keep your house standing, but empty out the rooms inside. A strange invitation. A week later, something happened that confused both of us. Sarah, our eldest, suddenly invited us to her house for dinner. It was unusual. She almost never invited us unless it was a birthday or Eid. I felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. I wanted to dress nicely, bring something, make a good impression. Imagine a mother wanting to make a good impression on her own child. I prepared a small bowl of homemade kheer. Amir ironed his shirt with extra care. I wore the blue dupatta Sarah always said looked nice on me. When we arrived, the house was quiet. No children running around, no aroma of dinner cooking. Sarah greeted us politely, but her smile looked strained. She asked us to sit down. Her husband joined us a few minutes later. Then she spoke, so gently, with so much caution that my chest tightened before she even finished her first sentence. "Mama, Baba, I know you're both doing fine on your own, but we were thinking, maybe you should consider moving to a smaller place." My world tilted for a moment. She continued, "You know, the house is big, too big for just the two of you. It's hard to manage, and the neighborhood is far from hospitals. Maybe you should think about something closer to us, or something more manageable." Her husband nodded, as if he had rehearsed this. I felt my throat tighten, but I managed a small smile. "Are you worried about us?" I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation told me the truth, even before her words did. "No, not worried. Just thinking it might be better." Better for whom? Better for what? But I didn't ask. Parents swallow their questions long before the words reach their tongue. I simply said, "We'll think about it." The conversation shifted after that, but the air felt different. Heavy, careful, uncomfortable. On the way home, Amir didn't speak. I didn't either. The silence between us was full of unspoken thoughts. When we reached home and closed the gate behind us, Amir whispered, "They don't want the responsibility." I didn't respond. But deep inside, I felt the truth settle like dust in an abandoned room. The first time I felt like a burden. In the days following that dinner, something changed inside me. For the first time in my life, I felt like a burden. Not because my children said it. They never would. They're good people, with good hearts. They would never say such a thing directly. but sometimes you feel what isn't said. When children begin talking about what's easier, more practical, more convenient, you hear something else. You are not part of our world anymore. I told Amir we shouldn't think too negatively. They're trying to help us, I insisted. But Amir shook his head. They don't want us to need them. That's different from helping. I didn't have the strength to say he was right. The garden incident. A few days later, I experienced a moment I'll never forget. Small, but sharp. Like a tiny cut that keeps stinging, long after it happens. I was trimming the rose bushes in the front garden. It had rained earlier and the soil was damp. I bent down to reach one of the lower branches, but suddenly my knee slipped, and I fell forward onto the grass. It wasn't a hard fall. It didn't break anything. But for a moment, I just lay there, stunned by how weak I'd become. Amir rushed over. "Are you hurt?" he asked, helping me stand. No, I'm fine," I insisted, brushing off dirt. But that night, my knee swelled. I limped around the house, still insisting I was okay. Amir wanted to take me to a doctor, but I refused. The next morning, I called Sarah, not because I wanted help, but because I needed someone to talk to. The moment she answered, she said, "Mama, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you later?" I quickly said, "Yes, of course. Go." We hung up. She called back that evening. "Mama, everything okay?" she asked. I opened my mouth to tell her about the fall, but something stopped me. Her tone was rushed. She sounded tired. She sounded like someone hoping the conversation would be short. So I said, "Everything is fine. Just wanted to hear your voice." She sighed in relief. Actually sighed and said, "Oh, good. I got so worried." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "It's okay," I whispered. After the call, I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my knee gently. For the first time, I realized something painful. I didn't want to worry my own children, and in trying not to worry them, I had begun hiding my own loneliness. Amir's health begins to shift. Around this time, I began noticing changes in Amir too. He moved slower. He rested more often. His breath grew heavier after simple tasks. Once, while rearranging the living room cushions, he suddenly sat down and pressed his hand to his chest. I ran to him, panicked, but he waved me off. "It's nothing," he said. "Just tired." But I knew it wasn't just tiredness. We had grown old. Quietly, gently, slowly. Old age had wrapped itself around us like an old blanket. Our children knew this. They saw it during the rare times they visited. But they always said the same things. "You're strong, Baba." "Mama, you look younger each time we see you." "You both are doing great." "Don't worry, you're not old." They said these things to feel better, not to make us feel better. And we let them believe it. Because that's what parents do, protect their children from everything. Even the truth. The day the house felt too big. One afternoon, Amir looked around our home, our old, warm, memory-filled home, and said something that made my heart sink. "This house, it feels too big now." I knew exactly what he meant. Not physically big. Emotionally big. Every room held memories. Every corner whispered names. Every wall echoed laughter from a past that no longer visited. I sat beside him, placed my hand over his, and said, "We're still here. That's enough." But was it enough? If I'm honest, sometimes it didn't feel like it. I smiled at her, even though my heart felt tight. "Don't worry about the time, Beta," I said gently. "Just seeing you made my day." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "I'll try to come again next weekend," she said softly. as if she were making a promise she already knew she couldn't keep. When she finally left, the silence in the house felt heavier than before. My wife and I stood by the door for a long moment after she drove away. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Some silences speak for themselves. That night, as we lay in bed, my wife whispered she looked tired. Yes, I replied, and stressed. My wife turned toward me. She wants to do right by us. I can see that. But something is stopping her. I swallowed. I knew exactly what she meant. Our daughter was a good girl, kind, sensitive, loving. But her husband, he was different. He never said anything directly, never insulted us openly, never raised his voice. But in the small things, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he walked quickly out of a room when we entered, the way he never initiated a visit, it was obvious that he did not want us involved in their lives. He was polite enough in front of our daughter, respectful even. But respect is not in tone. Respect is in presence, in staying, in showing you care. And he never stayed. Not once. My wife sighed. Do you think we should talk to her about it? No, I said quietly. It will only put her in a difficult position. She nodded, though I could hear the sadness in her breath. That night, long. After my wife had fallen asleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how quickly children grow away from us. It felt like only yesterday, when she cried because she couldn't find her school shoes. And now she cried because life was harder than she expected. And I couldn't fix it anymore. The next few weeks passed slowly. In that time, our daughter visited once. Just once. For 20 minutes. She looked even more exhausted than before. Her hair was tied up in a rushed bun. Her eyes were ringed with fatigue. Her shoulders were slumped, as if holding invisible weight. She hugged my wife and me, but her mind was elsewhere, lost in a storm that she couldn't tell us about. When she left, my wife broke down. She didn't sob loudly. She didn't cry uncontrollably. She just sat on the edge of the bed and let tears travel down her cheeks silently. I sat beside her and held her hands. She's slipping away from us, she whispered. No, I said softly. She's still ours. She's just overwhelmed. My wife leaned her head on my shoulder. I don't want her to grow old with regrets. I kissed the top of her head, and she won't. Life has a way of reminding children who their real home is. But even as I said it, I wondered if I was just comforting myself. A month later, everything came into the open. It happened on an afternoon when the sky was cloudy, and the wind carried a strange sadness. My wife and I were preparing tea when the phone rang. It was our daughter. Her voice was trembling. "Papa," she said, "can I come over?" "Of course," I replied immediately. "Is everything all right?" "No," she whispered. And then the call ended. My wife and I exchanged a terrified glance. Within 30 minutes, our daughter arrived. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. Her breath was uneven. She walked into our home like someone escaping a storm. "Beta, what happened?" my wife asked, holding her shoulders. And then, for the first time in years, our daughter cried like she used to as a child. Deeply, uncontrollably, with her whole heart. "I can't do this anymore," she sobbed. "I feel like I'm disappearing." We sat her down between us, one parent on each side, like when she was little. Between broken breaths, she told us everything she had been hiding. She told us how her husband didn't like her visiting us, how he said it was a waste of time, how he made her feel guilty for caring about us, how he slowly pushed her away from everyone who mattered to her. "He isn't cruel," she said desperately. "He doesn't shout. He doesn't hit. But he makes me feel small. He makes me feel like I'm wrong for wanting love. He makes me feel alone. Those words, those words broke something inside me. Because no parent wants to hear that their child is suffering. Quietly, painfully, invisibly. My wife cried softly beside her. I held both their hands. You are not wrong, I said firmly. You are never wrong for wanting love. Our daughter leaned into us, her head on my lap, her hand clutching her mother's. For a long time, none of us spoke. We just sat together, in a circle of love that had been waiting for her to return to it. That evening, after she calmed down, my wife cooked her favorite food. We sat together at the dining table, just like we used to. For the first time in years, she laughed a little. A tired laugh, but a real one. Before she left, she hugged us tightly. I miss this, she whispered. I miss home. I held her gently. We are always here, I said. You will never have to face your pain alone. She nodded, wiping her tears. But as she walked to her car, I noticed something. She didn't look relieved. She looked scared, as if she knew that going back would be harder than before. And she was right, because a storm was coming. One that would test all of us. That night, long after our daughter had driven away, sleep refused to visit my eyes. I kept replaying her words in my mind. He makes me feel small. He makes me feel alone. As a parent, you spend your entire life trying to protect your children from pain. You shield them when they are small. You guide them when they are young. But once they are adults, you can only watch from a distance. My wife sat beside me on the bed, her hands clasped tightly together. I wish she could stay here, she whispered. I wish we could bring her back home. I placed my hand on hers. I know, I said, but she has to decide that for herself. For now, we support her quietly. My wife nodded, but I saw the helplessness in her eyes. There is no pain deeper than a mother watching her daughter struggle and being unable to fix it. The next day, our daughter texted us early in the morning. Reached home. I'm okay. I'll call you later. My wife stared at the message for a long time. She isn't okay, she said softly. And she was right. When a child says, I'm okay too quickly, you know they're not. Over the next week, our daughter kept in touch more than usual. Small texts, quick calls, tiny updates. But something felt off. Her voice was quieter. Her laughter had disappeared. Even her silence had changed. It felt like she was tiptoeing through her own life. On the 8th day, she called me in the evening. Her voice was almost a whisper. Papa, can I talk to you alone? I stepped outside the house and sat on the veranda. Of course, Beta, I said. Tell me. There was a long pause, a very long one. Then she said words that froze my breath. Papa, he said I should stop coming to see you and Mama. The silence that followed was heavy. I felt an ache deep inside my chest, the kind of ache that doesn't hurt loudly, but deeply. My voice came out quiet. Why? He says I get too emotional after seeing you both. He says it affects my mood. He said, we're too attached, and I need to grow out of it. My heart sank. Grow out of love? Grow out of parents? What kind of thinking was this? I forced my voice to stay gentle. And what did you say? I told him he's wrong, she replied. I told him I need you both. That you're my peace. My home. And? Her breathing trembled. He didn't shout, Papa. He never does. But he said it in this cold way. Do what you want, but don't expect me to support you. I closed my eyes. This wasn't anger. This was control, the kind that hides behind silence. Beta, I said softly. You don't need anyone's permission to love your parents. She didn't speak, but I could hear her tears. I just feel torn, she whispered. As if, no matter what I do, I'm hurting someone. Then, listen to this, I said firmly. You are not hurting us by choosing yourself. My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't care. Come when you can. Call when you can. We want your happiness, not your guilt. She cried quietly, and I let her. Some tears heal. Some tears release what words cannot. A few days later she came again, but this time she arrived alone. No car, no driver, no hurried steps. She had taken a taxi. When she walked through the door, she looked different. Not sad, not broken, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying burdens no one sees. My wife hugged her tightly. She held our daughter for so long that I wondered if she would ever let go. We sat together in the living room. The air felt warmer, safer, calmer. My daughter spoke slowly, as if choosing each word with care. I had a long conversation with him, she said. I leaned forward slightly. My wife held her hand. She continued. I told him that visiting you isn't optional, that I won't stop. That you're my parents, and nothing will change that. My wife's eyes filled with tears. And what did he say? I asked gently. She took a deep breath. He said, if I keep choosing you both over him, then he doesn't know what our future will look like. My wife covered her mouth with her hands. I felt as if someone had punched the air out of my lungs. A threat. Not loud. Not dramatic. A quiet, cold threat. I whispered, you should never have to choose between your parents and your marriage. That's not love. I know, she said. I know, Papa. That's why I came here. I needed to hear it from you. We sat in silence for a moment. A long, heavy moment filled with love and fear and uncertainty. Then she looked up, her eyes glistening. Papa, Mama, she said softly. If anything ever happens, if things get worse, will you both be here for me? My wife broke into tears again. I took my daughter's hands in mine. Always, I said. Until our last breath, we are here. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, like she used to as a child. And in that moment, I felt our little family become whole again, even if the world outside was trying to pull it apart. But peace doesn't last forever. Not when someone is determined to disturb it. And soon, very soon, the situation would take a turn none of us expected. A phone call, a confrontation, a truth that would shake our daughter more than anything before. The storm that had been building finally arrived. We were not ready. The storm arrived on a quiet morning. It was one of those slow, peaceful mornings when the sunlight falls softly through the curtains, and the world feels gentle. My wife was watering the plants. I was reading the newspaper, half distracted, half awake. Then the phone rang. My wife wiped her hands on her dupatta and answered. I didn't think much of it until I heard the sharp inhale she tried to hide. G? Yes. She's here? My wife said, her voice trembling slightly. I looked up immediately, my heartbeat tightening. After a few seconds, she lowered the phone and whispered, It's him. Our son-in-law. Calling our house for the first time. In all these years, he had never called us directly. I got up slowly and took the phone from her. Hello? I said calmly. His voice was colder than winter wind. Is she there? No, I answered. I replied. She left for work an hour ago. A pause. A long one. Then he said, I know she came to see you yesterday. Yes. I said simply. She didn't tell me she was going, he replied, frustration hiding under his controlled tone. I kept my voice steady. She's an adult. She doesn't need permission to visit her parents. There was silence on his end. A heavy silence. Then he spoke again, his voice lower now. I think you both are interfering too much. My grip on the phone tightened. My wife stepped closer, anxiously watching my face. Interfering? I repeated softly. We're her parents. We only listen when she cries. We only comfort when she needs comfort. She's emotional because of you, he snapped quietly. She's stressed, unstable. She keeps questioning our marriage after talking to you both. I took a deep breath. Betta, I said gently, if she is questioning her marriage, the problem is not us. It is what she faces at home. Silence again. But this silence was sharper. Then he said something that cut deeper than anything before. You both need to understand your place. She has a new life now. Old bonds should not interfere. I felt those words like needles in my chest. Old bonds. As if parents become outdated. As if love has an expiry date. Before I could respond, he continued. And this is the last time I will say it politely. Stop filling her mind. Stop reminding her of things she needs to forget. Let her move on. I took a moment before I replied. My voice stayed calm but firm. We never told her to walk away from anything. We only told her to be happy. If your relationship is threatened by her love for her parents, perhaps it is weaker than you think. He exhaled angrily. Then, click. He hung up. I stood there holding the phone, listening to the empty tone. My wife placed a trembling hand on my arm. What did he say? I didn't answer immediately. I didn't want to scare her. But she saw the truth in my face anyway. He wants her to forget us, I finally said softly. He wants us out of her life. My wife's eyes filled instantly. She sat down, covering her mouth, shaking her head in disbelief. No, no parent deserves that, she whispered. I knelt beside her. Don't cry, I said, though my own eyes were burning. We will not lose her. Not like this. But inside, I felt something heavy settle in my chest. A fear I had been pushing away for months. A fear that maybe, just maybe, our daughter was being forced to choose. That evening, our daughter came over after work. She looked tired, but something else was there too. A heaviness, a tension around her eyes. My wife brought her tea. She didn't drink it. Instead, she looked at us with trembling lips. He called you both, didn't he? She whispered. We didn't respond. Our silence was answer enough. She covered her face with her hands. I didn't want this, she said. I didn't want things to get worse. My wife sat beside her and gently pulled her hands away. Tell us, Beta, she said. What is happening at home? Our daughter swallowed. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. He's angry, she said. He said I'm becoming difficult, emotional, stubborn. He said I'm choosing sentiment over my marriage. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. But Papa, Mama, how is loving my parents a weakness? How is missing you both a problem? My wife hugged her, kissing her hair, whispering, It's not, it's never a problem. Our daughter leaned into her, crying softly. Then she said something that broke my heart completely. He said that I should focus on building a future with him, not holding on to the past. And he said you both are a distraction. A distraction, parents, the ones who raised her, protected her, loved her, reduced to a burden. I took her hand in mine. Beta, I said slowly, you are not wrong, you are not weak. You are not difficult. You are a daughter, and a daughter's heart is wide enough to hold many loves. She nodding, crying silently. I don't want to lose you both, she whispered. I feel like I'm being pulled from every side. Her voice broke into a sob. And I feel so alone. My wife held her tightly, tears falling onto our daughter's shoulder. I placed my hand on their backs, feeling the weight of our little family trying to hold itself together. In that moment, I understood something painfully clear. Our daughter wasn't breaking because of us. She was breaking because she was fighting a battle she never deserved to fight. And soon, that battle would reach a point where something had to give. Someone had to choose. Something had to change. And none of us were ready for what would come next.